Now I'm going to push back on you there because I know I say that all the time, and I know when you say I know what you're talking about when you say make it modular.
Yeah.
But a lot of beginning coders out there don't understand what that means in making it modular. They don't understand what it means, how to do that, and why that's important. Can you dive into that a little bit?
All right. So,
and I know it's a little difficult because it's kind of a conceptual thing.
That is right.
Yeah, if you can.
Well, I kind of approach it from the perspective of how short of a code can I write that would do some specific task, right? So if I could write one set of, a bunch of lines of code that would just do one specific task and put that into its own separate function or method, then that's that's one way of being modular, right? So that you could use that function in different sections of your code without having to mess with a longer line of code. So,
and why is that so important?
Oh, it is very important in the sense that, I've seen a lot of coders do this. Like, they write code that does one big task, okay? And yeah, that works. Then they write another set of code that writes another big task. Then you see that a lot of the code from the second task and the first task are the same, or could probably be tweaked a little so that they would work together, right? Mm-hmm. So that's very important in the sense that you have to have reusable code as well, right? So modular, reusable, I guess it's, goes in tandem with each other.
I want to tell a little story in regards to that because one of the first plugins that I ever wrote for WishList Products was a plugin called List Users. And it was about creating basically a members list. And I did that exact thing. I had all of the functionality for creating them. There were two different kinds of lists that could be created. Yeah. And there were two separate files. The two files were almost identical in terms of the code. It was just the type of members that got queried at the very beginning. And then there was this massive if-else block. So it was if, and there was this massive set of code, and then else, and another massive set of code. And even within those, the else repeated a lot what was within the original block. And then I had two files like that. Yeah. I mean, I go back and I look at it and I go, oh my God. And it was just like these huge chunks of code. And inevitably what happened was they wanted to make upgrades, they wanted to make updates. And now here I am making upgrades in 4 different spots. Right. Because I've repeated a bunch of code that if I had chunked it out, which I actually, when I rewrote the plugin that we now call Members Directory or Wishlist Directory.
Wishlist Directory.
And that's what I did. I chunked the code out into smaller functions. Yeah. And then you just have kind of a main controller function that calls all of the necessary stuff or method or whatever. And so one thing I want to dive into is, a lot of the impetus behind wanting to do this interview has to do with a PDF that I had created for a course that I have, the PHP and MySQL 101, and it talks a lot about database structure and object modeling in the context of overall application design. And so we've talked a lot about modular and reusable code and so forth, but I want to kind of dive into the details a little bit in terms of database structure. So for example, we talk about modular in the PDF, and you've seen the PDF, but for anybody who hasn't seen it, just kind of a refresher, we talk about I lay out 3 different table types that you would create. You have object tables, meta tables, and then relationships tables. And those are the primary forms of tables that you're going to have when you're creating a database structure. And those are what allow you to make it more modular and so forth. So maybe you could talk just a little bit about database structure in relation to how you go that in terms of the overall concept of object modeling, creating objects, how you create connections between them, how do you differentiate between primary data and metadata and so forth. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.